The wind sang its old glassy song against the Tower of Sleep, a column of frost and iron rising from the heart of the polar crater. Lyra stood before the door that remembered her. She had been young when she sealed it, and the door had learned the rhythm of her pulse, the slight catch in her breath when she lied to the council and said she would never come back. 2.5 centuries had done little to the tower, but everything to Lyra. Her hair, once the color of river bark, was now long and metallic white like drifted snow, and the silver filaments at her temples whispered low to the machine under the ice. She pressed her palm to the sigil plate. The cold that stepped through her bones felt like a greeting. Behind her, the night sky was crowded with slow, deliberate lights. The siege constellation. The harvesters had come out of the dark between the stars, mapping their hunger across Agir's orbit, folding entire continents into their pattern. The council had spent a century negotiating and surrendering in equal measure, and now the sky itself spelled their last answer. She had promised never to return. But promises were for quiet years. This was not a quiet year. The door retreated like a held breath, and Lyra entered the nave. It was a cathedral to sleep, ribbed with arches of bone-white alloy and humming with the faintest echo of an old war. At the far end, raised like an altar, lay the sarcophagus that had pulled empires out of alignment with a single rumor. No name carved upon it. None were needed. He was the human. He was the one they feared. She walked the aisle alone, boots whispering over frost. The last time she had stood here, the chamber was full of voices and ceremonial heat. The council had called it mercy. Lyra had called it postponement. She reached the control plinth and removed the ring from her finger, the only ring she had ever worn, the one that contained a key older than the city, then set it in the shallow human-shaped notch. "Lyra," the tower said in the first voice it had used on her, the gentle tenor of a novice engineer who had loved a vow too much. "Consider what follows. When the human wakes, he changes the world." "Then the world was ready to be changed," she answered. "Now it is the world or us." The tower fell silent. The sarcophagus sighed. Vapor buoyed up like the breath of a giant turning in his sleep. The lid slid aside with the smooth patience of a tide. His hair was black as meltwater basalt. His skin was the pallor of stasis. When his eyes opened, they were not the pale machine blue that Tales had granted him, but a severe gray that made a person feel accounted for. He looked at Lyra first, and for an instant she saw the young woman she had been reflected in his gaze. Coal-streaked, angry, certain as spring floodwater. "Keep her," he said, voice unused to air. "How long?" 251 years, Lyra said. "Kade Voss." He sat up. The name passed through him like a blade drawn from a sheath no longer needed. He was smaller than the legends, larger than the room. He touched the edge of the sarcophagus, and the alloy hummed. "You swore you would never wake me." "I swore it to men who believed fear a stable foundation," Lyra said. "The harvesters are here. They have begun binding our oceans. The council will trade us into a quiet death. I came because the children kept asking me what we would do." Kade lowered his feet to the floor. The cold did not move him. He looked to the high screen where the siege constellation crawled like sickness. "Harvesters," he repeated, as if testing the word for weak points. "They eat what they map. Predictable in appetite. Unreliable in promise. You fought their kind once," she said. "I fought everything once." He turned his hands, inspecting the scars that stasis could not smooth away. What did it cost? Lyra knew what he meant. The names rose in her like smoke. North Watch. The Riverline. The orbitals of chalk. My sister. My teacher. The children at Salt Gate. Your friend Morrow. Kade nodded, and the acknowledgement was a stern little prayer. Good, he said softly. Let the debt be present. He stepped off the dais and the Tower of Sleep woke with him, lights unfurling in cautious bloom. He did not ask for armies. He asked for a map, a list of frequencies, a schematic of the machines biting into the planet's tides. He asked for the old vault, the one no one spoke of. Lyra led him down into the iron belly of the tower, through corridors that had the humility of things built for true need. The vault held relics of a war they had chosen to forget, the Lullaby Engine, pale and curved like the shell of a dead moon. On the casing, Lyra saw her own signature beside a younger Kade's, signed the night the council convinced them to build a weapon that would sing enemy minds empty. It was not used, Lyra said. It was almost used, Kade replied. Today we use it properly. He did not look like a monster. He looked like a man bracing the beam of a burning house while a handful of others ran under it to live. They carried the engine to the highest point of the city where the air was thin and the stars were a field of cold seeds. The siege constellation shifted, sensing movement. Distant thunder, the kind made by ships that never needed sails, rolled across the firmament. Kade placed his hand on the engine and closed his eyes. They bind with pattern, he said. Then we give them a pattern they cannot hold. A wave rose from the tower. Not sound, not light, but the organized intention of both. It reached through the harvesters' mapping nets and rearranged the arithmetic of their hunger, turned their coordinates into lullabies and their greed into a room with no doors. In the streets below, people staggered, not from harm but from a felt absence. The fear that had welded itself to their joints slipped, and their hands found themselves free. The sky flickered. Ships like knives paused, softened, flickered again. One by one, the lights of the siege constellation guttered, as if a storm had blown through an orchard and left the trees intact, fruit simply gone. Lyra realized her hands were shaking only when Kade steadied them. They will return, he said. Hunger is patient. But we have time. Time is a war I prefer. Below them, a murmur rose that was not worship but relief. The city's bells, long unused, found their tongues. What will you do now? Lyra asked. She felt very old and very young, as if the years she had given to a long stalemate had come back all at once. Kade looked past the thawing horizon. The first thread of dawn was stitching iron to gold. The story they told about me, it helped them survive as much as it hurt them grow, he said. Break it. Teach them to fear less clever men and more easy answers. Teach them that waking me is not salvation but a failure of earlier courage. He placed the ring back in her palm. Keep it. But do not use it unless you have exhausted yourselves. And you? Lyra asked. I will walk, he said. There are hands here that have not held tools for too long. I remember how to build bridges and ovens, not just barricades. They descended into a city rearranging itself around the absence of siege. Children ran beside them and did not run away. Old enemies nodded because there was work to do. The Tower of Sleep closed its doors, not as a tomb, but like a book whose chapter had ended.